Okay. So, so continuing with the October 2024 20-year-old female diagnostic, I'm going to click on continue scoring. Whenever you come back up, the patient information is automatically going to start up, as well as the recommended hypopnea scoring rule. So we're just going to be staging right now, so we're not going to really focus on that. So go ahead and click close. We ended on 93. So right now it's in a full montage. What I want to do instead is go to my staging montage. Sorry, custom staging montage. Yes, you can customize your montage from the base one and change the amplitude or gain so it's easier for you to see, therefore easier for you to stage. So last epoch was 93. Epoch 93 was REM. I think the one before that was REM as well. So we started REM back. Oh, there we go. Epoch 85. So going back, we did have an arousal there, given our increase in EMG here. So we're going to keep going forward. And we're going on to 94. So 94 was also going to be your, we're looking in here at that continuous movement. That continuous eye movement is our prime indication. Also, we haven't had any arousals. Well, we had that arousal a while back since we continued with our eye movement and we didn't have any slow rolling eyes appear. Since we didn't have any slow rolling eyes appear, which would take us out of REM, we continued on and we had these sharp eye movements. We're going to continue on in REM. So same for 95 and 96. Now there are some seeing some instances in increase in muscle activity in the chin channel down here. So what I do want to add an annotation. So we can see a little bit with this increase in the chin EMG. There is a little bit of alpha that occurs after that. So here, we look in this box here. So what I want to do is go in and add that there is an arousal here. Sorry, we wanted to add up to our 3 seconds. So with this, we have our increased chin EMG, our alpha waves. We're going to go in and add one arousal and then go on to epoch 97. Now I'm not going to add any arousal here just because it has the increased chin EMG, specifically because there's no shift in frequency. She also continues with the eye movements as it goes through. And then in comparison to this one, to where you can even see the alpha frequency in the eyelids. So going to the next, we have continued sharp eye movements here. Continued sharp eye movements here. Now, do remember that you have the basic and tonic portions of room. Uh, Tonic being like an area here. So there's not much movement going on versus the last epoch. When I go back, where we had all of this movement here. We have the basic from these eye movements. If you think of phasing or a phase, it's moving around. So if we go into the next epoch, this area here where nothing's really happening is your tonic room. So tone, if you think of a relaxed tone, nothing's really happening versus something that is phasing. Phasing as in changing. So we're gonna go back or go on to 98, which I already have here staged this run. So again, we see those eye movements that come back up, portion of the basic movement and continuing on with the same thing. So a little bit of increase in the chin activity here. There's a little bit of muscle artifact in the rest of the EEG leads here as well. So likely that my patient has some type of teeth grinding motions going on. So continuing on, there is the tonic tonic phase examples as well here, where there's not really any arm movement happening, but the rest of the EEG is that low voltage, very low voltage. So we know this red line is our 75 microvolt line, and that's what we consider our slow waves and delta qualifying amplitude. So NREM is going to be very, very small amplitude wise. These little tick marks that are going up that you see here in each of the channels, they're actually artifact coming from likely wherever they reference to, likely M2. You can also see it in the chin lead. And if you look down here in the EKG, they all pop up or happen simultaneously all at the same time. That's just an example of your EKG artifact. So that's really contributed most to any of the increased amplitude of these waves. So I'm going to go on. So 101 here, before we get to that little arousal that we have at the end, it continues on with low voltage, the very non-moving or tonic eyes. But once we get to around the 19-second mark here, of course, we see that increased chin EMG, as well as the increased frequency in the EEG, and even up here in the eyelids. I think I already marked the arousal, so I add in one arousal here, but this is still stage is REM because majority of the epoch is REM. That was a a total of 30 seconds with the entire epoch. The arousal is from about 18 seconds to 30. So it's not really majority of the epoch for it to have changed the stage. But going into the next epoch thing, yeah. So going into the next epoch, we see that very high frequency continues on until about 7 seconds, and then it just continues on with alpha frequency. Continues and continues. I'm gonna zoom into a little bit of that. So it's very prominent at the first half. Didn't mean to do that. It's very prominent at the first half. So here, all of this is your alpha frequency compared to the second half here, where it starts to attenuate, especially right around in here, where it's not as continuous like it was here. That was a little bit of time where a patient is getting a little bit closer into sleep. But with this continuous alpha frequency here that you can see in each channel, I'm going to stage this as wake here. Remember, if the epoch is 15 or more seconds of wake, the patient is going to be in wake. Now, what I'm going to do is skip ahead a little bit here, and I want to do that because after that um, alpha frequency went away, we didn't really gain any slow rolling eyes. So not really looking into N1, but our alpha frequency does go away. I'm not, not really seeing any other waveforms. I want to see if this patient may have gone back into REM. So I skip forward to 104 into 105, 6, and a little into 108. So up until about 107, and even including 107, I would stage this person back in REM given the lack of eye movements, the lack of other waveforms, especially contributing to N1 or N2, and the very settled eyes. I'm going to say up until 108 here. So excluding 107, let's see our halfway mark. This can get out the way I can see. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this is our halfway mark here, 15 out of the 30 seconds. This kind of looks like a K complex, and even if counted, it's in the second half, so it wouldn't really qualify for this epoch itself of being stage two, but for the next epoch, this one here. And then there's another one here between 7 and 8. And once you've established your stage two, we're going to remember that to come out of that, you are going to either transition into a deeper stage. So your stage three with that 6 or more seconds, which is your 20%, which is 20% of your epoch with that slow wave or delta activity, or you have an arousal followed by slow wave, not slow wave, but slow rolling eye movement, as you would see in one, or even sharp eye movement. If you see a patient transition into REM, which is actually pretty common to come out of stage two into REM. So I actually want to go back. I'm going to continue staging these as rim until we see those K complexes. I believe that happened in 107, making 108, and therefore stage 2. So seeing a couple little spindle here. Maybe I can got a spindle here. Even if we didn't, we would continue in stage 2 until one of those reasons I was just explaining about um, becomes present. So we've kind of had something happen here. So you can see in our so if you can see in our chin channel down here, there was an increase in the amplitude there. Also a little bit of artifact in the EKG channel here. So it's likely that the patient had some type of movement going on to increase muscle activity within this second between 5 and 6. Because after then, we're kind of taken over a little bit by we're kind of taken over a little bit by this alpha frequency. Now you'll see it best in your O channels, but you can still see a little bit. And I'm increasing the gain or zoom amplitude size in each of these channels just to make it a little more obvious. But from 7 on, we see that continuous alpha frequency. I want to highlight where our arousal was. So that's our main arousal here. And this actually continues on, if you can see. It kind of stops about here and then it comes right back, making the rest of this epoch here and stage wake. And I'm gonna go and that little pop-up is just a reminder that if you made an annotation such as this arousal annotation, but if you did not mark it, it's just the uh just an IRS, just an ISR little tool. So even more movement we can see, this is some of our movement artifact. We know this because our increased muscle tone, which is going to contribute to our higher frequency. So as you can see in the EEG, as well as the eyelids and the chin channel, which is primarily EMG, has increased. If you compare it to 110 here to 111, it's much higher. So when you're awake, your EMG tone is much, much, much higher, compared to, as you can see, in stage 2. So as well as this one, we're going to add, this is stage wake. Also with the movement artifact, you can definitely see in the EKG channel. And if I had my leg leads on here, you'd see that as well. Continuing on, after alpha frequency. So I'm just gonna highlight that. Alpha rhythm, perfect. So that's seen in the O channels. We have more of it all through here. I'm gonna add that up. So we want to add that up because remember, if it's more than 15 seconds, and this is actually a little before then, it kind of starts about here. So if it's more than 15 seconds, this is 10 seconds. This is 11, so that's 21 seconds full of alpha activity. That means our patient is still in stage wake. And we're using our ASM guidelines. We want less than 15 seconds of alpha activity. So it actually continues on here. So let's see how much this is. Um, it stops around, let me see, it was about 11 seconds. So I'm gonna add in my algorithm annotation to see how many seconds of that we have. There we go. So a total of 11.7 compared, oh, our stops about right here. 16.54. So compared to the rest of the epoch, where we're looking at a bit of low voltage mixed frequency as in it's a little faster here versus a little slower here. When we're thinking of speed, we're thinking of cycles. So one cycle is up and then back down, up and then back down, up and then back down here, just like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're in our theta range where it's anywhere from about 4 to 7. So given that this is about 15.54, we're really close to 15 seconds, but not yet. I'm going to state this as N1. So we're seeing a little bit more for alpha frequency here. So we're going to annotate that. It's our algorithm. So we have about 14.34 seconds of that. So not exactly enough. So I'm going to go ahead and say just stage 1 as well and continuing on. So I'm going to move these back down. Kind of easier for me to view. So I'm going to put this here 1/3 second. So there's a K complex, and I am going to count it as one, and that will make this a stage 2. There's also an arousal in here. I'm gonna add that in here. If you look between, can't see the seconds at the top and the middle, but it starts here and ends at about 18 here. Do have an arousal there. I'll close out of that, and now I'm not going to forget to add it in my annotations. Now, despite this arousal, remember if there's arousal, this will take our next or our remainder of the second half to a lower stage. There's a K complex here at the end, which will keep us in stage 2 for the next epoch. Until there's another arousal. Like this one's a little more visible than the last one here. To the new eye. I feel like that's something you all would have caught on your own there. So I have an arousal there. We'll say there's a little mini K complex. You know, and K complexes are gonna be best seen in your frontal channel. And one thing we do want to remember is that there isn't an amplitude requirement for your K complexes. I'm gonna remember to add that arousal. Um, there isn't a minimum height for K complexes, like there is for your slow wave activity. Like these will be able to be annotate. These will able to be counted into our slow wave, counting up to our 20%. But obviously, that's our only little few seconds there, which is about a half second each, 1 second total. So obviously, we're going to be still in stage two. We're going to move on to the next one. And stage two is pretty dominant stage. So with this one here, I'm going to go on until I see any differences. So again, I do want to make an annotation for this slow wave activity. So the activity happening here, we got a few seconds of that. Okay, let me out of this. So about half second each over the line. So 1, 2, 3, 4 half seconds. So not quite enough, or we'll actually add this one here at the end, this 2. So 5 total. When we're counting half seconds, we're looking for a total of 12. So nice little K complex with a spindle here. So just pointing some of these things out for viewing purposes. Spindle here, sweep spindle. So these are some very prime I spelled it wrong, so that's fine. Very prominent features of stage two. Again, I do want to point out some of these spindles and things here. So here. So a lot of sleep spindles. So lots of these spindles are indication of the brain trying to stay asleep. So it's a good indication of stage two, where a lot of the preparing for um, paralysis happens, or the start of. So then a lot of stage two features here. Another sleep spindle here at what, like 9 seconds. We have a K complex and a spindle. Now, do remember that K complexes and spindles can be seen on their own. They can also be seen separately, like these here. So we have a few examples. So we have I'm gonna go into these. We have the K complex with the spindle together, K complex here, spindle that follows right after it. We have one spindle by itself, and then another K complex by itself. I feel like those are really good examples there. We have a few more spindles and K complexes here at the end. And even one that's back to back. Now that's just kind of coincidence. It's not really as common as a K complex followed by a spindle. K complexes are or can be identified as something that they say is a reaction to sound, like a sound arousal. So it's something that when it's followed by a spindle, is just an indication of your brain just trying to stay asleep in that sense. So more spindles going on. We're going to keep on going. We're seeing some spindles between seconds 2 and 3 around the center, seeing a really big K complex passing our 75 microvolt line. So we know that's going to qualify as one of our slow waves. There aren't that many in this epoch, so I'm not even going to bother about counting or considering it being stage 3. We do see some spindles here at the end and some qualifying slow waves and spindles at the end as well. So continuing on in 3, in 2, gonna keep on. Here again, we're seeing those spindles, no arousals yet, and no drastic increases of delta activity, as well as no strict changes. So we're seeing a lot of spindles in this one. I feel like these are really nice examples. So between 4 and 6, can't see the top of wherever these 2 seconds are. What is this? 17, 21 through 23, and 25 through 27. So oftentimes, younger people's EEG can be a lot more prominent. Their amplitude is typically a little higher, so your waveforms can be easier to identify. So we're going to continue to no no browsers. Continue into 2. We're starting to see some increase in the slow waves there at the end. Not enough to count. So this is what we'll continue on. And we do have a slight arousal. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think it's 3 seconds though. No, so I wouldn't count it. I'm gonna stay in stage 2. So still seeing our K complexes. We're seeing some delta waves, spindles, and so forth. So we know from the beginning, I think we might be going into REM soon. Typically, with the indication of going into REM soon, our amplitude drops just a bit. So, an example, I just went back a little bit to 138, and I'm going to move on. So, if you see the difference between 138 as we continue on to 140, 141, 142, 143, the amplitude starts to decrease a little bit. So we were a little bit closer to our 75 microvolt line at first, but now we are just a little bit further away from it. Still in 2. That's just one of the indications, as well as these eye movements up here. That can just be um, movement that's related to this K complex. Very possible. But not all K complexes, for example, in this last epoch. And there's a few K complexes in here, so you can see that those don't all necessarily match up in the eye leads as much as this one did. So you see, start to see more spiky eye movements. I start to get the, indication of, maybe we're moving into REM soon. So continuing with our stage 2 activity, I'm gonna keep this in 2. I am starting to see not only when you transitioning or transitioning soon into REM in your eyelids, but you'll also start to see some more spiky type waveforms. They start to bring out the sawtooth type of tune. So if you look in a few seconds here, I'm gonna do a couple circles in here. Not too much, that's ugly. So these 2 seconds here as well as this here, those are particularly kind of spiky waveforms. a little more spiky than I feel like, than you see into. So kind of another reason I have an idea that it's moving into REM soon. Okay, looks like we have an arousal here though, but we are getting some slow wave activity. I'm going to highlight this arousal first. So we know we have duration minimum is 4.88 seconds. Remember, we need 30 seconds. 30 seconds. We need 3 seconds minimum. So 3 second minimum meds. Say exactly. And immediately after, I'm going to go ahead and mark this one arousal. We are starting to get some nice little slow wave activity here. So we can go in to a little counting of our 5 seconds, make it over the line. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. 5. Do a little more skipping ahead. 6, 7, 8, 9. I would go ahead and count stuff from here to the end, but we're just barely making it. So counting here, when I'm doing the counting half second, when you're counting half seconds, what you want is 12 total, because we're looking for 6 totals. 6 total. 6 seconds total. So still on stage 2. And we're going to continue. So after that arousal, we had those slow waves and K complexes. So that our next epoch will be 151. We're continuing into, and we're going to keep on going until we see any changes. Seeing some slow wave activity, not enough to look close enough to, well, it's still about here. So let's do counting. So about here, we have 2, 3. This one here, I can't count. That's 4. This one 5. This one is this here. 6, 7, 8. So not quite. This one's just barely touching the line, but I'll still count it. It's still at a total of 10 though, so not quite. So we're gonna continue until we delete this. Okay, let's delete these. Oh, I'll go back. Okay, so these are all 2. If you already counted these, this one's 2 as well. We're gonna continue on. It doesn't really look countable, slow wave wise. Um, this one, let's just do it just to see. I don't believe it's over 6 seconds, but we'll see. We got a 1, 2, 3. I'll even count this. 5, 6. It's been really close. So a lot of them are getting to be 6 seconds. Total of 10 half seconds. So we're getting close. But yes, this will still need to be 2. And same, so on and so forth. Helping to fly through. And going through and acknowledging if there are any arousals. None yet. I'm starting to see that spiky waveforms again, especially in the eyelids. And continue forward and see if we make it back into REM, or even if we make it to 3. So this one can be counted as well. So we'll go ahead and go through and count these. First to make it to the line here. 1, 2, 3 here. 4, 5. This one here is 6. We'll count this one here as well. 10, so still really close. Not close enough, so we're going to stand in 2 and continue. So getting closer for sure. So you can go through and count these. 1, 2, and 3. Even if it's just barely touching the line, I'd consider that as well for. I count this K complex as well, just because it's passing that line. Line 10 here. 11 here. 12. 13. I'm going to keep going, even though we've made it. 14. Just to see how many we have in total. 15. So to take a better look at the ones we counted here. And I honestly could have counted one more in here after this 13. But either way, this will be our stage 3. We're going to continue forward. So our amplitude continues to stay pretty much above or at that line. So we're going to continue on with our stage 3. Seems like they're definitely made it to their deep sleep. The first few epochs we were looking at. So I'm just continuing to go through and put in these as N3. because we have a continuous very high amplitude. I'll go back a couple. So remember, just 6 seconds above that 75 microvolt line is going to put us in stage 3. I'm scoring this arousal here. You see that increase in frequency at rough ship. Why can't I click this? Whatever. That, there we go. Didn't want to do that. All right. Does not want to participate correctly. Okay. So staying in N3, at least for here, for now, we gonna mark that arousal. We have an arousal that starts at about 27 after our continuous slow wave activity. So a lot of movement here, a lot of movement artifact. You can see in actually every channel, high amplitude muscle frequency in the EEG, as well as high EMG amplitude in the chin channel. And here, as well as high muscle frequency in the eyelids. So, and the kind of movement here, you can see when the muscle artifact is highest, there is artifact in the EKG. It's kind of indicating that the patient is moving around. So I can see this patient's awake, so I'm gonna put them in wake. We have lots of alpha activity. Let's just see here, but definitely our algorithm. So we have a lot of that in here, even before then. So this patient's awake. We're gonna move on. So back to movement. Immediately score rate, bunch of muscle activity, bunch of EKG artifact in the EKG, bunch of alpha frequency. Now alpha frequency drops out at about 8 seconds here. A little bit comes back in here, but they continue on with that blow mixed frequency. So we're gonna keep them in one. A slight slow eye movement seen in the eyelid up here. Immediate K complexes in the first 3 to 5 seconds. First few seconds, a couple K complexes. So we're going to continue on here with stage 2 again and continue on and so forth. So we actually have 5 more epochs left here. So it looks like we may end on a stage 2. If that is correct. So we started with epoch 1 and our very deep sleep. In stage N3, there was an arousal immediately into our next stage. But despite that arousal, she actually stayed went back right into N3 there. She was sleeping pretty decently. Still in N3. She starts to have some arousals. Sorry, not arousal. She goes down into N2. So we see some spindles, K complexes, spindles. Another K complex here. But that is the ending of the staging for 93 to the end. So what I want to do now is go back to respiratory, and we're going to start at 93 and then switch to our scoring screen, which is going to be spacebar. It's going to take you to a 2-minute screen rather than 30 seconds. It's expected to score in either anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. Okay, that would be great. Okay, 93. I'll hit my space bar. I'm gonna move over a little just so we have all four of our box that we haven't done just yet. So actually, yeah, so we ended on 93. I'm gonna start with 93 here. When it comes to scoring, first thing I want to do is look at my oxygen levels. So we get indication if we're gonna have any type of changes. So looking here in our SaO2, we see we're kind of around 95, 96. We do have some dips into 94. Have some dips into 94 around here. We're looking for a 3% desaturation. We will be looking for anything 93 or 90, yeah, 93 or below. It's about pretty much 96, even lower, but not really seeing anything below that 94. So we're good in that sense. Let's look at our pressure channel here and take a look at our reference line to see if there's any changes. Let's go back so we can look between 92 and 93. See, 92 was still in REM. So we go from 96 to 95 down to 94, which isn't too bad. Go up to 97 here. We'd only really be concerned if it went right back down to 94, which would be at 3% desaturation. But honestly, looking at our reference line, not really much going on. There is something here around, what is this, 70? We see a slight change in the airflow here. Honestly, even a little before then, if we're looking especially at our pressure channel, the bottom of our pressure channel here, if we look here where it starts around about, that's about 60, 65, all of this here is our decreased airflow. So it's at 12.71 seconds. Remember what we're looking for significance would be 10 seconds and above. But we already kind of determined that we didn't have any we didn't have any drops in oxygen. One thing I do want to go back and add in here is that we have a few leg movements. So our leg movements are going to be at least half a second. we want to do is go in and add limb movements one to each of these epochs here. Okay, so we're going to continue on to 94. We saw a decreased airflow. I'm going to check into these leg movements. So we do have a leg movement here. These look a little too short. So for limb movements, I'm going to add in those two leg movements. We're going to move on to epoch 95 here. So we do see some slight changes going on in the pressure channel. Um, so we didn't have any 3% desaturations with AASM guidelines. The next thing we look for is any arousals. So if it has that decreased airflow and is followed by arousal after. So our arousals have been notated by our annotations here. There's not one in 95, but we do have one in 96 here. And there is a brief moment of decreased airflow that we can see here. So you can see it pretty clearly by looking at the using this reference line here, looking between the bottom and the top. The biggest difference is from the bottom there. So with this decreased airflow followed by the arousal, we're going to go in and score a hypopnea. So this is decreased airflow. I'll also put in hypopnea here. So we'll continue on. Not really any leg movements happening anymore in here. So we're going to go to epoch 97. So no arousals that were notated in here. The SaO2 is about 96, 97, coming around there. That's pretty normal. So we're going to go on to 98. No documented arousals, no change in oxygen, no flat lines in our airflow or effort channel. So we're going to continue on. We're going to look in epoch 99 in a 30-second view. And I want to do this just to measure this movement. And as you can see, this movement isn't really meeting criteria. We know we want the leg movements to be at least a half second. Now it does reach that 8 microvolt line. So a total of 16 is we're looking to pass that line when it comes to limb movements. But since it was not more than half a second, it's not scoreable. So we're continuing to epoch 100 here. So I'm just going to be working in each individual epoch, so it's easier to follow. I'll always be referring to the epoch in the little red rectangle we have here. So oxygen levels are staying around 97, 96. Our airflow lines are pretty consistent here. So I'm going to continue on to the next one. We had that arousal there. There wasn't much of a change in the airflow. Let's look at the bottom here. That could have caused this arousal here. It could have just been movement, patient changing positions throughout the night. So looking at the top and the bottom here, there's not any significant changes. So no respiratory effort-related arousals, also known as ureas, but also not any hypopneas. We're gonna go on. We're awake. We can't stage anything awake, so we're gonna go ahead and skip this one. Back to 103. Patient back in REM. Kind of strong. Do is bring these down just by one, just so they're a little more distinguishable and not kind of in the way of each other. This one needs a little help actually. There we go. So in 103, our oxygen levels, we have 95, 94, pretty normal, no significant changes in our pressure channel pretty much at all. So no flat lines, no really, sorry, no, not really any decreases in amplitude either. So we're not really seeing any hypopnea, no flat lines, so definitely no apnea at all. We're going to continue to 104. Now, 104 does look like it may have changed a little bit in the pressure channel. If you look at about starting at 35, really about 30. See, if we look at our baseline, it goes up just a little bit from the bottom. Not much from the top. Let's start up from the bottom here. So what I want to do in this little moment, I'm going to put in our decreased airflow. We're wondering if that's a hypopnea. We'll see if there's a decrease in the oxygen or any arousals that may have happened. Like that. So no documented arousals. Remember, we scored arousals with our EEG. All our EEG is up here at the top. So if there was an arousal in here, you'd see a blue box. So no arousal. The oxygen level, it drops down to 95 or 1% desaturation. Obviously, that's not significant really anyway. So moving on to 105. Again, looking at our airflow, not really significant changes. A little bit there towards the end of 105. We already saw that there weren't any documented arousals in these next four epochs, but I am seeing a leg movement in 106. To 106. Let's measure this here. About 1 second. So, do want to document that. So, our leg movement in 106. I'm going to add in 1. So, she has a little bit of front leg movement, which is a little interesting. It's not too typical. Moving on. There seems to be a slight fluctuation in the oxygen levels here, but not really significant. So I'm going to continue checking back into our leg movement. I'm going to add that in there. I hit spacebar to go back to my scoring screen, and then I'm going to continue on. So there is an arousal here right after the end of 109. So we wanted to see if that's possibly caused by any hypopnea-related event. So from the top of our baseline here, not really much difference, but slightly a little bit from the bottom. Look at these compared to the breath here, compared to the breath here. We do have about 11.3 seconds of increased airflow. And then followed by the arousal. I'm going to score a hypopnea of it. Let's see. And hypopnea is scored for this decreased airflow and the arousal that follows it. And the patient wakes up. So we're going to continue on. Remember skipping over all of wake, not scoring anything during wake. So patient literally falls asleep here. Patient is asleep here. I do see a wake movement, about 2 seconds. I'm gonna go ahead and score that. So moving on. No really significant changes in the oxygen in the pressure channel. There is a slight change. I'll actually increase this a bit. There's a slight change towards the end there. You can see for a few seconds after that arousal. And it looks like the oxygen levels start to go down. So we want to see if there are any desaturations that happen after that to see if we have an hypopnea going into 117. So we're going to look again here. Sorry, significant changes towards the end. What I'm going to do is go all the way to 116 here. So it goes from 96 to 94. So despite this little area of decreased airflow, there aren't any 3% desaturations or arousals that happen after it. So we're not going to worry too much about it. So moving forward into 117 through 119. We have some annotations in our EEG channels toward the top at the end. These are just points out of slow wave activity, K complexes, and spindles. So we're looking pretty good. No leg movements in these next four. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and skip forward to 120. So again, annotations for spindles and K complexes. Looking at our oxygen levels, look pretty consistent. 95, 95, 94, 96. That's good. So we're going to click out of that. And look at these next four here. So up until about 123, we're not really seeing any changes here. No arousals. So I'm going to skip over to 124 through 127. So again, starting with the oxygen levels, no significant changes. So nothing, no desaturations over 3%. In our EEGs, no arousal, so I'm not worried about hypopneas in that sense. And all of our airflow channels are continuously moving as well as our effort channel. So no apneas. We're going to go to the next set with 128 through 131. So first thing I can see, we do have an apnea here. We're seeing some flat lines, about 20 to 25. So what I want to do is go in and annotate this to see how long that duration is. So not very long. Central activity doesn't meet duration requirement. So we had the, let's check out. We have that central activity. It does not meet 10 seconds. It starts here. It's about 5 seconds. 5 seconds. 5 seconds total. So nothing to score. I'm gonna keep on continuing. So oxygen levels, they're pretty steady. So we're gonna keep on. We're gonna do our next set, which will start at 132. The channels seem to be pretty consistent at this point. There is a little bit of changes going on in the pressure channel, not too many. So you do have that slightly lighter breathing that happens here for about 13 seconds. So, decreased airflow. There was no 3% desat, so no hypopnea. There was also no arousal that occurred after it, so I'm not going to worry about that. Let's take another peek at the oxygen levels for our next four up until 35, 135, 95, 96, 97. It's pretty normal. We're going to go to our next set. So oftentimes scoring does go quicker. I mean, obviously, because you're in the longer screen, but it's less to weigh out in criteria wise. So first you can look at our oxygen levels. They're pretty consistent. No desaturations. Let's look at our pressure channel. Look at find our baseline at the bottom. It's about here. No no really big difference. No big differences here. Baseline is about here. And we didn't have any arousals at the top, so we're not going to worry about anything in that sense. So we're going to skip on to 140 at the start. And we're kind of just continuing the same boat. So let's go to our next four. So looking at 144, there is a slight leg movement. It's definitely not half a second. I'm going to go back to our larger screen. Our oxygen levels seem to be the same, so we're going to go from 147 at the start of our next. Now there is an arousal towards the end. Looking at the pressure channel, I don't actually see any major differences. At least that will contribute to being that arousal. See our baseline here is pretty consistent. I'm gonna click out of that. So going on with 151 being our start. I'm gonna ignore that. Actually, I didn't put an arousal in here. It's in here. We're talking about 151. So looking from 151 to 154, oxygen levels still pretty consistent, pretty much the same. We're going to keep on to our next set of four. And continuing. So what I'm going to do is slowly go through here till we see any visible changes. So we start to see leg movements, any arousals that can possibly contribute to uh, be contributed to by hypopnea or a change in our oxygen levels. But so far, it's been pretty consistent. They seem to be floating around 96, 95. Do have some, I was going to say some leg muscle activation, but I believe it's just EKG artifact that I'm seeing here, lining up with the QRS and some of the T waves. So we're gonna continue to 169 at our stop of the first four, and we're gonna keep on looking to see if there's any changes. So our flow lines and effort lines are pretty consistent. No leg movements really going on. There is some snoring, as we can see, but no documented arousals until we get to 187. There's that arousal. I think we determined that was movement. There's not a change in the pressure channel at all. So, gonna continue. I cannot see the stage of this. I believe it's wake. Yes. We're gonna skip through all of this wake here and like turn the pressure channel down and continue on with our sleep. So we're at 97. I don't see any 93s. We would have marked any desaturations during the staging process. So I'm gonna continue on till we see any possible arousals. It's pretty consistent. So we have made it to about 200. That is actually the last of the staging and scoring. So 200, they were asleep. Step up. We already went through the first 93. So that is the end of the 20-year-old female diagnostic. Continuing on next time, what we'll probably do is go through the scoring review to see how we do.